Hi, Ann Reardon is a YouTuber with almost 5 million subscribers, and she makes videos where she cooks and shows recipes. Debunks viral videos is one of her most popular series. She has debunked videos where people cook meat in their toaster.
And this is showing us how to cook steak in a toaster.
And she educates and tells us why we shouldn't do that. So her content is very educational. There are a few statements in her last video about milk I don't agree with when it comes to the environmental impact. She basically says it's too complicated and there are so much information. Some are used and manipulated to make this one look good and this bad, so she can't say what's best. The majority of this video is going to be about that, but I wanted to go through in order because there are some points in the beginning of the video as well that I want to make. There are so much unbiased research that we can use to understand the dairy industry better, and I think it's important to talk about because we kind of don't. It's always like, oh yeah, they're being treated bad, but not here, not my milk. It's fine. I can only find positive comments, not that I'm looking for hate comments. What a brilliant video this is, informative and unbiased, and thanking her. There are so many people getting educated by her content. That's why I'm doing this. If you haven't watched her video, it's linked below. I don't think you have to watch it to watch this one to understand. All my sources, her video, my script is linked. If you prefer reading or if you want a written version, use my script, or if you want to remake this video. She starts off by talking about how the animals are being treated, how that's an issue. There are places where cows are being horribly treated. She says that you can buy from ethical farms where they let the mom be with her baby longer and it's like more expensive. I personally don't have any ethical I don't think that's a thing where I live. There are organic farms, but the closest one is 10 minutes away from here, and I worked there. And when the farmer separated the mom from the baby, he took a rake and just pushed her in the barn. It was so crowded. There were hundreds of cows. They walked around in their own feces, or they just stood and stared into a wall. I don't know, they weren't so nice. Like, I know that's only my experience. That's only one experience at one farm. But still, he used such violence. And of course, every farmer isn't like that. Of course, there are farmers who cares and loves their animals and would never do that. How are you supposed to know? Because you don't buy milk direct from a farmer, you buy it from a company. I thought that organic farms were better, but now I found that even organic farms are allowed to tie up their cows, and the only thing that differs organic versus conventional where I live is the weed control. On the company's website, the farm I worked for, there's no information about what happens with the male calves. If the cow gives birth to a baby cowboy, they won't grow up and become dairy cows, so they are sent to sale yards or slaughterhouses. It broke my heart to read the number of male calves being killed straight after birth is on the rise again, despite efforts by the dairy industry to end it. It's cheaper that way. That's something that I haven't thought about until now, that when you buy dairy products, you support the beef industry. Now back to Ann Reardon and what she says happens if you don't buy dairy.
And then the cows don't get to frolic in a paddock with their calves and live happily ever after. There would be no dairy cows then. They wouldn't be needed anymore, so they just wouldn't exist. So if that appeals to you, go for that. If you like the idea of them frolicking in the fields, go for a boutique dairy.
I'm kind of like, what? Okay, so if you support that cows doesn't exist, buy vegan milk. If there were 0 dairy cows, that won't mean 0 cows living terrible lives. The cows wouldn't be extinct. I just thought that was a kind of weird point you made. Then nutrition.
1 glass of cow's milk, this size, 250 mils, has in it 300 milligrams of calcium. This video from Food Theory, they're telling us some other places that we can get that calcium from.
They say that broccoli and kale and beans have more calcium than milk, which automatically is confusing to say when you don't say the amount of something having a higher nutrients, and debunks that and shows how much beans you need to have to get your calcium in. I don't know why she's making fun of my breakfast. She goes on for about 4 minutes about that. I just think it's kind of ridiculous because of course no one is going to eat that much kale or that much broccoli. There are supplements you can take. Calcium is derived from stone, so it's vegan, but they can use beeswax. You have to search for vegan supplements if you want vegan calcium supplements. After those 4 minutes, she says,
doesn't matter, you can get it added in these ones because they're fortified, or you can get it naturally from these. That's up to you.
I just think it's cooler to get it from stone. I don't know. Getting calcium through a fluid that's meant for baby cows, if you call that natural, for humans, I don't know.
If you're making your own nut milks, particularly if you have kids at home, you need to figure out where they're going to get that calcium from.
She doesn't give any examples of good sources except from the beans earlier. Maybe here she could have mentioned the supplements, because it's common for babies to take vitamin D supplements, for example. To give two sources, the biggest UK health website and the Cleveland Clinic. She follows that up with showing how bone mineral density peaks and decreases around your 30s, how a surplus of calcium could be beneficial but doesn't help as good as other medication. This is actually a relevant topic because the loss of bone density is becoming a major health concern. But strength training is the best option for adults wishing to increase bone density. Another clinic says that you can include plenty of calcium to your diet and pay attention to vitamin D, as your body needs vitamin D to absorb calcium, and include physical activity in your daily routine to prevent or slow down bone loss. Now onto saturated fats. The one thing every human knows kills you.
And saturated fat is of concern because it's been shown time and time again in studies that it's not good for your cardiovascular health or your heart health. Increases cholesterol, increases the risk of heart attacks and all of that sort of thing. This one I 100% agree with. If you're going to choose dairy, choose low-fat dairy.
She doesn't say that full-fat milk is bad, but I think this contributes to there being good and bad food. I don't support that. Full-fat stuff tastes better. Personally, I don't want to give that up. In past videos, she's mentioned to focus more on implementing good food than rejecting bad food. I like that. Nothing is necessarily bad for you in moderation, as Joey Delaney says. Maybe she just recommends low-fat milk because she thinks that's better and there's nothing more to it. I don't think that milk with 3% fat is the main cause why people have heart disease. If you have a milk with 3% fat, you can just blend it out with some water if you like. That also lowers the amount of packages you have to buy. Now to the fun part, or to the actual, to the environmental impact.
Interestingly, this is such a complicated equation to work out because there are so many factors that go into making a product, from planting trees or buying your cows.
Wait, what?
You can actually find dairies that are very efficient and have a low environmental impact, and you can probably vice versa. There's not really one that I can pull out for you and quite confidently say is better for the environment.
I did not expect that. As I said earlier, there's a lot of information you can get, a lot of research you can access. Should we not do that? Are we going to ignore unbiased research because there's so much? So let's start. Let's talk about the environmental impact that dairy production has. Cows produce methane and waste. There are 274 million cows in my room in the world. A full-grown cow can produce up to 500 liters of methane per day. After carbon dioxide, methane is the second most abundant greenhouse gas. Methane accounts for about 20% of global emissions, although methane is much more potent to trap heat in the atmosphere. How much depends. The first 20 years, it traps 84 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Ruminants are responsible for 30% of the global methane emissions, where cattle is the large majority. Another study shows that livestock is being responsible for 27% of global methane emissions. In a global methane assignment from 2021, you can read that the level of methane in the atmosphere is increasing faster now than any time since the 1980s. Human-caused emissions come from three sectors: fossil fuels, agriculture, and waste. Methane has a short atmospheric lifetime, meaning taking action now can quickly reduce atmospheric concentrations, reducing food waste and loss, improving livestock management, and the adoption of a vegetarian or lower meat and dairy content could reduce more methane emissions than changing the oil, gas, and coal and waste sector over the next few decades. The United States Environmental Protection Agency calls out enteric fermentation to be the largest source of methane emissions in the US. Despite pandemic shutdowns, both carbon dioxide and methane surged in 2020. The global energy demand declined by almost 4% the first quarter of 2020. The coal demand fell almost 8% compared to 2019. By the end of March 2020, global road transport activity was almost down 50% below the 2019 average, and aviation 60% below. The electricity demand was depressed by 20% or more during the periods of full lockdown in several countries, and somehow the levels of greenhouse gases didn't care. Cow's manure contains phosphorus and nitrogen, and with rainfall can fall off into local waterways, contributing to algal blooms that turn the water green and can produce toxins harmful to drinking water. Animal waste contributes to 50 to 85% of ammonia emissions in the US. Cows are responsible for 205,000 of the 1.5 million metric tons of ammonia emissions per year. They are near large-scale industrialized pig, chicken, and dairy cow operations. Not only stinks, it can be hazardous to public health, but no one knows exactly what the air surrounding such facilities because the US livestock industry has long been exempt from reporting hazardous air emissions under a federal law. It doesn't matter if the cows are on an ethical farm or in a barn inside, they're still producing methane and waste. According to a paper 2021, deforestation's main driver is pasture expansion for cattle production, 80%. Thanks to public policy and other initiatives, deforestation rates have declined. Despite this, deforestation for expanded cattle production continues. Beef production is the #1 driver of tropical deforestation worldwide. In South America, it was responsible for 71% of total deforestation between 1990 and 2005. Cattle are raised primarily for meat and dairy products, but also fats, leather, and gelatin. Soy is the second largest driver of deforestation, and every year around 500,000 hectares are deforested for soy. 70 to 75% of the world's soy ends up as feed for cows, chicken, and pigs. Deforestation leads to the release of heat-trapping gases, reduces biodiversity and habitat loss for a variety of species. The Amazon rainforest is home to 3 million species of plants and animals and 1 million people, and it's a vital carbon store. A BBC article reports official data showing deforestation in Brazil's Amazon rainforest has hit its highest level in over 15 years. It increased 22% in a year. A different article says that added destruction is particularly concerning when considering that roughly half of the Cerrado has been destroyed since the 1970s, mostly for farming and ranching. Cerrado is a tropical savanna in Brazil, with soy expansion and cattle ranching being the direct driver of forest loss. 2020, 227 people were killed because they fought for the environment. This is the highest number recorded for a second consecutive year. Threats against defenders increased, including intimidation, surveillance, sexual violence, and criminalization. The report shows 17 people being killed fighting against agriculture. For 112 lives, the sector could not be confirmed. 1988, Chico Mendes was shot 2 feet away from his home. He fought to save the rainforest. There are so many more people. All of them died protecting the Amazon rainforest. On average, according to reports, 1 activist has been killed in Brazil every week since 2002. So we have emissions, we have deforestation, water pollution, and the ones who try to stop this getting killed. I think that's enough reasons to not support the dairy industry. Can farmers help the campaign to cut methane emissions? Yes, they can provide animals with more nutritious food so that they are larger, healthier, and more productive. I don't think that would make these animals any happier. FAO supports this, meaning improved breeding and animal health interventions to allow herd sizes to shrink, meaning fewer and more productive animals will help. They say nothing about not eating beef or drinking cow's milk. They just wanna make it more efficient. A farmer BBC interviewed said, obviously climate change is happening. Greenhouse gases are helped by humans. Part of it is a natural process like when the ice age ended, but it's speeded up, there's no doubt about that. Farmers have an extra responsibility to take care of both the environment and of the emissions. There are more people, so you need more animals to feed everyone. The bottom line is that we are overpopulated. This is supported in a paper from 2009, claiming a risk factor for climate change is the growth of the human population, projected to be roughly 35% between 2006 and 2050. That would mean 8.9 billion people. In 2006, we were about 6.6 billion people. Today, we are close to 8 billion already. FAO reports that the number of livestock will approximately double. An effective strategy must involve replacing livestock with better alternatives rather than substituting one meat product with another meat product. This is not specifically concerning cow's milk. They made this this beef example. Still, I think it's relevant because they mentioned both meat and dairy in the article. They claim the key change would be a significant reduction in livestock products. WWF doesn't seem to care that much. They agree that milk production impacts the environment in various ways and that the impact depends, but they aim to transform the milk production industry, so that's great. Maybe they support to make it more efficient. As this FAO report says, the emissions from dairy production does depend. So why am I even making this video? That's what Ann Reardon said. I agree, but in my opinion, it depends how bad it is. An Oxford University study consolidated data covering almost 40,000 farms. Even the lowest impact animal products typically exceed those of vegetable substitutes, providing new evidence for the importance of dietary change. That's it for the environmental impact part of my video. I will pause right here and go and buy some milk. Ann Reardon says milk contains a lot of nutrients and is crucial for people around the world who doesn't have that much food. Milk is necessary for them to get calcium and other vitamins, and I can't argue with that. Of course not, that's not a reason for me to buy milk. I think oat milk makes the most sense. The process of making oat milk is far less dramatic. You can even buy local oats and make it yourself. It just makes sense that plant-based milks are better for the environment. They're from plants. Like, considering the food chain, new drinks are coming. Like, for example, this is a new drink made of beans, and beans you can farm in North Europe where I live. And when you buy plant-based milks, you support the companies. Based on everything I've researched about, dairy isn't sustainable. So I think it's important to help these companies. I don't care what kind of milk you drink. I don't drink cow's milk because I think milk tastes bad. And I don't want to support the industry either. Oat milk tastes just so much better. I quickly want to mention, if it's not already obvious, I like oat milk. This is nothing against Ann Reardon. She's not an environmental researcher and neither am I. But I believe it's important to talk about what we do know, that we do the thing that we think is right. Because as Mark Manson writes in his book about the fact that we're wrong basically all the time. Things we believed as a society 500 years ago, we think back and we're like, how could we believe that? When you realize you're wrong, you're like, oh, I was wrong, and then you learn from that, and the next time you do it a little bit less wrong. Or something I did last week, I can be like, why did I do that? Because I didn't know better. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't act on what we believe is right. Thank you for watching.